Welcome to Mechanical Advantage Garage. I'm Kerry, and this is the wrap-up of my Mecum 2025 coverage because bikes are here. We're picking up the bikes we purchased at Mecum. They were transported for us by the lovely folks at Mr. CBX, Jan and Robbie, and all the folks that work for them. And yeah, so we're happy that the bikes are here. We want to get them loaded up, and I'll give you some thoughts about how I thought Mecum went this year, and we'll ask some other people too. So let's get these bikes in the truck. I'm glad you're tired. Yeah. One of the things I love about picking up bikes from Mr. CBX is you could always come and see some cool stuff like this Mr. Turbo powered CB750, 75 CB750. Look at this. Turbo, no intercooler, big old wastegate. I mean, probably not fast for now, but fast for its time. Big old boost gauge on top. I just love it. I think it's great. And of course, there's all this other amazing stuff too. Like the lineup of CBXs over there and all the sport bikes and Robbie's racing CBX in the middle. Just a lot of cool stuff. I don't even know what this chopper is here for, but it's cool as hell. Triumph too. Neat. Well, it's been just shy of 2 months since we got back from Mecum. And I know it's been a while, but I wanted to wait until the bikes that we had purchased arrived so that I could do a wrap-up video and talk about my experiences with Mecum and my experiences being a first-time purchaser with the actual bikes that we purchased at Mecum. So let's dive right into this, right? Last year, Dad and I went as tourists to Mecum. Even though we were registered to bid and did bid on motorcycles last year, we did not win any. Part of the reason was we were kind of gun shy and we didn't really get wrapped up into buying something that we wanted to overpay for. We had some very different ideas of values on some bikes that were selling at Mecum, and the ones that we wanted, you know, somebody just wanted it a lot more than we did. So that's how that worked. This year, we came a little more prepared. We brought money, which is always nice. And then Dad and I both registered to be bidders. And that's how we ended up purchasing what I think is probably a pretty good value for motorcycles in terms of what you buy at Mecum. But let's talk about that for a second, right? So if you're the kind of bargain hunter or deal hunter that thinks you're going to score at Mecum and that's the only reason you're going, it's not going to be fun for you. Yes, there are deals to be had. They are random. You have to be ready to move like super fast. And if you're not, these things will surprise you. There were several bikes that they went across the block for so much less than I thought they were. And had I been quicker, I would have bid on them myself. I think the biggest one of those was the modified Norton Atlas. I think it was a 64 that had this great history of being, the previous owner had passed away and his wife had co-signed the bike to Mecum for sale, for auction, and that was the bike that they had their first date on, and they had bought it from a Southern California drag racer, and the thing had just been in the family the entire time. And I think it went for something ridiculously low, like $4,000, because it had it wasn't bone stock. It was just, a nice clean Norton with some Dunstall parts on it. A good Southern California hot rod with a good story, right? I think that was worth way more than $4,000 that it brought, or $4,500, whatever it was it sold for. But let me tell you about buying things at Mecum. It is very much buyer beware. Now, you'll hear a lot of people talk about Mecum and be like, well, you can't hear the bikes run, you don't know what the real condition is. That's partly true and partly false, right? And here's a good example. This bike right here on the lift behind me, the 1987 Moto Guzzi SP2, the owner who was selling it was part of the Hendrix collection. He started it up for another bidder and had it running, and a friend of mine was there to witness it. Friend, acquaintance, I like to think he's a friend. I see him every year at Mecum. It's not like we hang out. But he's a very trustworthy individual and someone I've admired for a long time and have known through the hobby. And so if he tells me he saw it run, I believe him, right? And that was one of the factors when we saw this thing in the lineup. That was one of the factors that made us think, oh, we should bid on this, right? And he did tell us some other things too, like while it was running, it was arcing one of the plugs and it was leaking fuel. Now, that's not a surprise given a few things, right? One is, if you look on the plate right here, actually, I don't think you can see it, it's last registered 2010. So the bike's been sitting for a while. So it's not uncommon to see dried up seals, dried up fuel lines, things that are leaky, right? And that's plainly obvious to anybody. We saw it in the lineup. We were looking the bike over. You can see it in the video. There is the 15-year-old plate on it. That was the last time it was really plated and run for any reliable length of time. The other thing that we noticed about this bike was in the brochure, it was a very different picture. It had a bigger fairing on it. It had bags on it. It wasn't dropped on the right side. This one, we did notice that it had been dropped on the right side while it was in the lineup. And that factored into how much we bid, right? And in my mind, I know what fair market bottom value is, retail, for just any Timeframe Guzzi in my market, right? And that was where I set my floor. And I told Dad, that's what we bid up to, and if we go over, it's not ours. And lo and behold, it didn't go over, and we won it, right? But let me get back to buying and the condition of bikes at Mecum, right? One of the things that you have to come armed to if you are really intent to buy is you have to know the motorcycles you want to buy. and you have to get a very good look at them. And if you have an expert or a friend who's an expert who's on site, grab them and have them look at the bike for you, right? If you can find the owner, you can get them to start it up. But Mecum doesn't make that easy. They don't want you talking to owners beforehand because they don't want side deals. They don't want other things going on that they don't get a cut of, right? So it's kind of thing where sometimes you just have to hang around the bike and hope that the owner shows up. And if he does, you can make a deal. Or not make a deal, but you can get a good look at the bike, right? You can find out some history on it. You can sometimes put a key in it, start it up, see it run. They won't let you start it in the building. All these bikes had no gas in them while they were in the building. In fact, to start this one, they had to take it outside and run it out of gas. So that's how that happened. This one, we happened to actually run into the owner in the lineup ready to go up for auction, and he told us the most fantastical story about this bike, which honestly almost made me want to bid on it just on that alone, right? And I'll get to my experience with bidding on this one in a second, but let me get back to, who's at Mecum, why they're bidding, what the motorcycles are like, because what I found is there is absolutely a strategy to this, because Mecum came with a strategy. They are trying very hard to separate you from your money and make sure it goes into the owner of the bike's pocket, right? And they get their cut. It's not a bad thing. They're a business, yay capitalism and all that. But it's set up, really to the advantage of sellers more than buyers. For the buyers, what you're getting for your money is entertainment, okay? You're getting to buy something in a very public way, and you're getting to spend a lot of money and be flashy and showy. And sometimes you actually do get a really good deal, right? The guys I know that seem to bring bikes and then sell bikes and get really good deals, they tend to show up with a tractor trailer. They unload their bikes, and then they buy bikes as their bikes sell, so that they're not hauling back more than they brought. And they do well. They're sitting at the sidelines. They're ready to strike on stuff, and they know the market for the stuff they want, and they're ignoring everything that they don't want, right? So, my friends from Mr. CBX, they're looking at old Hondas. That's what they know best, right? They look at some other things that they happen to do some research on. They know they're looking at things for customers, and they're in it, So they get good deals, and their bikes sell, and they make money on it. So it's a good proposition for them. Plus, they get to go be in Vegas. So it's a lot of fun to do that sort of thing as well. The whole thing is a carnival. Which brings me to, if you have never gone, I think everybody who's a car guy, who's a bike guy, should go to one Mecum auction just as a spectator. It's $35 to get in. And there's way worse ways to spend $35 in Vegas and get way less entertainment, or Indianapolis for sure, or Clearwater, Florida, or wherever the heck they're hosting their various auctions. The spectator stuff, it's a really good value. You get to walk around, you get to see the stuff up close, you get to go into the back area, and you can really look things over before it goes up to the auction. The only thing you can't do is sit in the bidders' chairs right at the end of the stage, right? Which is where I film all of my stuff from, because we register as bidders. Now, if you really want to go and you want to spend the money and be a bidder and be ready to go, it costs. It's not cheap. I think it's about $250 to register. And I think they run a credit check on you. I don't remember if they did on me or not. I know they did on Dad the first time he registered. I don't think they did it after that. But it's basically just to make sure you're good for the money, right? And by the way, they have financing on site. There's a company that will finance you for whatever stupid purchase you make. And maybe you won't get the greatest rate, but it's, being in an auction is a lot of, impulsivity. It's a lot of, sort of daring you to do something fun and stupid and be part of something. It's a collective. You feel like you're part of something when you're bidding. It really do. Like, everybody's looking at you and things are happening. People are vying against you. It's so much fun. So I think everybody who's a car or bike guy should experience it at least once, just to see what it's like, because it's chaos, and it's the best kind of organized chaos there is. It's just too much fun on a bike, right? So that brings me to the buying experience. Okay, there's a strategy to it. Wednesdays and Thursdays, what we have learned is that there's a hierarchy to the bikes that come out earlier versus the ones that come out later. And part of the reason why is Mecum's fees, right? So Wednesday bikes are much cheaper to buy than Thursday bikes or Friday bikes or Saturday bikes. I think it was 5% sale price on bikes, or 250 minimum, something like that. And then the next day it was 300 minimum or 10%. So the buyer's commission on this Moto Guzzi was $300. I shouldn't say the buyer. The buyer's commission to Mecum. Mecum gets paid $300 out of my pocket to purchase this motorcycle. This one we bought on Thursday, and it was $1,000 less than the other one, and it was $500 to purchase. That's how much went to Mecum as the buyer's commission. So yeah, you have to look at the stuff you want to buy every day, because it gets expensive quick. These bikes were cheap. They were under $5,000 each. They're under $7,000 total. But if you're there bidding on a $30,000 vintage Harley, you're paying a $3,000 buyer commission on that, maybe more. It's not cheap. So be prepared, be strategic. Dad and I always go on the website beforehand, and we look at everything that's in the list, and you can sort by makes and models and all that stuff. We try to get an idea, the feel of the stuff we want to check out beforehand, so we're not wading through 1,000 bikes just walking aimlessly. And those are the ones we hit first. We go to see if it's something we want, and then we whittle it down from there. Ironically enough, these two, not on our radar at all until we were there and we saw them, right? All the other stuff that we wanted to bid on, they went for big money, because, we have good taste. I don't know. I like to think I do, but who knows? So, we go in, we look at all the bikes. Be prepared if you're going to do it, right? Get the thing ahead of time. Even go back and look at past auctions and see what stuff's selling for, right? And see what the big numbers were, because anytime you see something go for a ridiculous sum of money at Mecum, you get 10 of them the next year, because everybody's trying to hit that jackpot again. So last year we saw H2s sell for 40 grand, and this year there were twice as many H2s and H1s, Cowie triples in general. And I gotta tell you, some of them went for really low money. Like, I saw some guy here in Columbus who was there, and he bought an S3, a white one, and I think he paid no money for it. It was gorgeous too. It was really a beautiful restored small 2-stroke triple, and he got a great bargain on it, because people were after the 750s, and the 250s and 350s weren't. Even the 400s weren't doing anything. Yeah, I think he bought an S2 that was a 350, a white one. It was really pretty with green stripes. Oh, so good. Anyway, so think about what you want to buy. Do your research. Do your homework. Know your market. Make sure you look at the bikes, right? Now, what did we buy? Well, we bought this Guzzi, and I'm going to do separate video walk-arounds and everything on these bikes. This is going to be a whole series, both these bikes, to see how we did at Mecum. Both, did we get taken, or did we get a really good value? What was the condition of things? And are we going to make money or lose our shirts? So if you like that kind of stuff, stay on the channel. I'm going to walk through these bikes. I'm going to walk through reconditioning them, and we're going to make decisions about how to sell them, how to market them, if I want to throw parts at them, or if I want to keep them the way they are. That's kind of the idea, right? So this Moto Guzzi, let's talk about this for a second. This was completely an impulse purchase. I love Moto Guzzis. I've owned two before this one. I owned a 1979 CX100 that was a black Le Mans 1 replica, even though it was a CX100 Le Mans 2. You're not supposed to call them Le Mans 2s because they're the 1000 SP engine instead of the 850 high revving, super hot rod Le Mans 2 engine. But I love that bike. I thought it was the most beautiful motorcycle on the planet. And then I have my 2023 V7 that I got from Throttle Company, who we saw at Mecum, by the way. And it's always good to see Ken and Dylan, and they're good friends. Same with Robbie and Jan from Mr. CBX, who shipped these back for me. Had a great personal favor. But yeah, the Guzzi here, I bought just because it was a Tanti. And it was probably the cheapest Tanti frame motorcycle that's sold at Mecum. We paid $3,000 for this at the hammer price, so $3,250 out the door, not counting shipping. And I still have to pay the taxes on it when I change the title over here in Ohio. But my Mecum hammer price is $3,250. So if I were a dealer, I wouldn't pay the taxes. But unfortunately, I'm not. Some things I found out about the bike afterward are it's one of something like 214 1987 SP2s that were made for the American market in 1987. Is that a good thing? I mean, it's rare, but sometimes rare is a headache, right? The problem with this bike in particular is that it was unpopular, right? Moto Guzzi was selling Le Manses, they were selling Californias, they were selling the big, name bikes, the big touring SP2s and G5s, which is the sporty version of the SP2, and even the Millie. The Millie sold probably the best out of this generation of Tanti frame bikes, behind the Le Mans, not counting the Le Mans because it really is a different bike. But yeah, the SP2 just didn't sell well in this country. It just wasn't a pretty bike. It wasn't something people wanted, even though America's big and vast and touring is great. And these are great touring motorcycles. It just wasn't what people wanted. And by the way, how do I know that it's an American market SP2? The VIN number. The rest of world bikes have a different length VIN number than the US market bikes. So it's rare. But what does that mean for me? Well, it means hard to find parts. And, let's go take a look at it for a second, and I'll sort of go over some of the things, because I think you really need to see some of this stuff as I talk about it. So one of the first things you'll notice about this bike is that it is not a stock color. It's been repainted. And it's this kind of orange that... At first, I thought the bike was a Millie because I think it's the 1990 model, one of the year Millies, which is the same tail section bodywork, but the fairing's different. I don't think the Millies had a fairing. There was one year that was like an orangish color, right? But actually, if you get up real close in here, I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can try and capture it. But every time I try to get close, there's actually a lot of pearl in this paint, which leads me to believe it's a two-stage automotive paint. It's kind of custom, right? In fact, let me see if we can capture it right here. Take my word for it. This thing has a ton of pearl when you see it outside. But yeah, it from back here, it looks like a fairly solid, nice bike. It's got either a Corbin or a Corbin replica kind of seat on it. It's got luggage racks, but no actual luggage for it, including the quick releases. Yeah, here's where you pull it and it pulls out. The thing that I liked about this is it has fluids in it, but there's no leaks underneath it. There's no drips. There's no drabs. Guzzis are kind of known for leaking their main drive units and for having oil leaks, and none of that here, So that was the first good sign in evaluating it. Now, if you don't know about Guzzies, this will be kind of not a surprise to you, but sort of a surprise. If you know about Guzzies, what I'm going to say, you're just going to go, oh, yeah, There was a period of time in the 80s, late 80s through, I want to say, the mid-2000s, where you could not get parts from Moto Guzzi for any of these bikes at all, right? If you bent your handlebars, you couldn't get stock handlebars. That's how bad it was. And I know this because a friend of mine in 2006 bent his handlebars on his California, couldn't get handlebars from the factory from Guzzi, right? So people were sort of left on their own to maintain these bikes with whatever they could. And so sometimes, especially with ones that have high mileage and need regular service, you find that they've been sort of, I don't want to say bastardized, but, the owners who cared about them kept them up as best they could in the time they could. So in this case, you see a lot of things like, this mount down here that's made out of it looks like one of those things you get on a battery when you buy the battery brand new, instead of the rubbers to hold the side cover. Now, I've pulled this side cover off. All the tabs are there for the side cover. The rubbers holding them in deteriorated, right? And then look, although this one I think is just somebody being cheap, there's zip ties all throughout the fuel lines because Guzzies have this weird, crossover fuel line system to make sure that both carbs are fed from both sides of the tank, and they leak. And so when they leak, somebody has to remake it, and they remake it with whatever's around, right? Same thing with these wires. They're not stock. Somebody made this. And in fact, this was something that was concerning because we saw this before we bought it. This wire isn't even hooked up, right? And actually, when I do the walk around, you'll learn about it. The plugs in there were broken very badly. But the reason why I was able to run is somebody dual plugged this head. So somebody spent money on this bike at one point. It has, nice features. Now, here's the things that I looked for. Hard to find stock exhaust, right? That's a huge win. Too many times people take off these pipes, they put bub pipes on, they put Contis, they put whatever around, and you lose these stock pipes. And this being a rare bike, if it didn't come with stock pipes, I was never going to find stock pipes, right? Coney shocks. These are, so I've been having a debate with someone. Someone said that these are original to the bike, that Moto Guzzies of this era come with Coney shocks. And then some other people said, no, they were an aftermarket upgrade, but everybody did it back in the day. So that made me happy. Actually, the paint itself made me happy too, because despite the rattle can black stripe here, which I hate and is going to come right off with some acetone, I love that somebody painted this because Italian motorcycles are just awful about paint from the factory. And case in point, here is my very beautiful Ducati, which I bought brand new, right? And it has a huge paint flaw for which I am forever angry at Ducati about. In fact, I probably will never buy another brand new Ducati ever in my life. Number one, because I don't think any of their product line really appeals to me. But number two, the quality was just so bad. So this is the second tank. This is a Sport 1000. It's a 2006. And when I bought it, it had the plastic expanding tank. And so the original tank, when you put ethynylated fuel in it, like E10 that's sold everywhere in America, the tank's expanded and this one cracked its original paint and also fell off its mounts. So they replaced it with this other tank. And let me show you this. This, from the factory, came with these blemishes here, which are air bubbles trapped in the stripe. And this one had a particularly bad air bubble. And when it popped, it took a piece of the stripe with it. So now I got to go through and touch it. And by the way, the clear coat on this is so thin, you can feel the decals underneath it. And you know that it's actually clear coated because you can see it when you get real close, right? It's not a hard edge of a decal. It is actually like that, sort of smoothed over gloss. Edgewood decal, but the paint is just ridiculously thin. And the same thing with Moto Guzzi's. Like, here's my brand new one, right? And this is probably the nicest paint that I've ever seen on a Moto Guzzi. And it still has like a little bit of flaws here and there. I don't even think this... Oh no, this decal is under the clear. But you can still feel it. It's not a very thick clear. It's only a matter of time before the paint rubs through on this from riding. Which is a shame because it's such a beautiful motorcycle. I think the color, which looks gray in this light but is actually a slate blue, is gorgeous. So anyway, but back to this bike, right? In my head, any running Guzzi in my neighborhood, not rideable, just running without issues, is about a $3,000 bike. And the reason we purchased this isn't because we thought we could make a lot of money on it or it was a sweet deal or whatever. It's really because Dad wanted to own a Moto Guzzi and Dad wanted to check off of his list buying a bike at Mecum. And this thing did both in one fell swoop, right? He got to buy a bike at Mecum. He gets to own a Moto Guzzi. And by the way, he turned 81 yesterday. So happy birthday, Dad. As part of sort of a makeshift birthday present, we actually started this thing up and got it to run. Because keep in mind, when we bought from Mecum, we did not know that if this bike actually ran or not. We had to take somebody's word for it, right? Now, obviously, this thing is clean-ish, but it's not the cleanest thing ever, okay? And that's part of the reason why we got it so cheap. In fact, if you get real close, you can see like 10 years of dust all over this thing. But it was a Texas bike. If you look at the plate here, 2010 out of Texas, right? So all of this dirt here, no rust. The bike is actually really clean. All this like kind of grime here on the frame, that'll polish right up. All this stuff right in here in the engine cases, that'll clean right up. I can even rebuild the carbs and polish these float bowls and they'll look fantastic. Same thing with these shocks. They look great. They're not leaking. They work. So that this will be a bike where we can detail it and it'll make it to the next level, and little things like repainting these emblems, which have paint chipping off them like everywhere and are not painted very well. I don't know if you can see it up here. Yeah, there's just paint coming off of them and huge sheets of the emblem. I can do that. That's easy detailing work. So yeah, we're just going to go through, make everything work, unscrew the bike, and ride it. And while we're riding it, we'll try to sell it. And if it doesn't sell, we'll do something else that's fun with it. Now, the upgrades to it, we did notice that it had brand new braided brake lines. It had dual plug heads. The Coney shocks, again, not sure if that's factory or not. I think it is, which is still great. And I think the front forks are Marzocchi. I think that's who made them. They're not Ceriani or Paoli or whoever. They're Marzocchi, which is the other Italian brand, which makes good forks. And Brembo F08 calipers at both corners, right? I'm not sure if the linked brake system is still working. I think it is. But, yeah, the brakes work. The lights work. This thing turns right on. So, it's actually, here, you know what? All right, so it's the left carb that needs the spritz to get it started, and then it runs. But, hey, bike runs. Doesn't run bad either, So, let's shut this off. And I have a few things that we'll go through on it to make it nice. And, follow along in the series if you want to see how we really did at Mecum. Now, the other bike we bought was this Chopper Honda. And this thing is I personally think it's cool because it's a relic from another era. You don't see customs like this anymore. And on top of that, the guy who owned this was a machinist. And he made all of these fiddly little parts for it. But more importantly, he didn't cut it. Like, it's not raked. It's not, hard-tailed by cutting the back end. It's got bolt-on struts, and it's got extended forks. But you could put this back to stock real easy. Even cooler is it has these aluminum, gold anodized, 18-inch rims front and rear, and the back one is extra wide to allow you to lace up a 130, which is about as big as you can go with these Hondas. So that's fantastic too. But what really makes this special is it's a K0. It is a second year 1970 Honda CB750. And in terms of collectible, right, the utmost pinnacle collectible single overhead cam CB750 is one of the 4 or one of the 6 Daytona bikes. I think it's 4 Daytona bikes they made originally, or one of the 970 kit bikes that they used to sell. Those are all race bikes, real stuff. 10 people know where they are. You'll never own it. It's millions of dollars kind of thing. I don't know if it's millions of dollars. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then next in line are sandcasts, which are about the first 1,000 or 4,000, I can't ever remember, CB750s, which had sandcast engines. And those are 1969s. And they're rare. They have unique parts on them. They're unique only to 1969. Everything was kind of handmade at those times. They weren't like die cast and all of that. So it was it's a more collectible bike, and there's things that you can tell about them and that make them special. And then the next in line after that are the 69 and 70 die casts, which this is one, right? Now, the great part about this and why it makes it a good value to me is that I got a parts bike right here. So if I need early K0 parts, I can just take them off this bike, which is going to be custom anyway, because it's already been modified with Lester wheels, and it's got a Tracy body on it, and various other stuff. So, and stock forks, which I'm not sure if I'm replacing or not, but yeah, I can take all the stock parts off of that since it's going to be custom anyway and put them on this. And then I have a stock K0, which I can turn around and sell for quite a bit more than I paid. So what did I pay for this? I paid $2,000, right? Which to me isn't a lot of money, right? To most people isn't a lot. Anyone looking for like an old single cam Honda, this was worth the price of admission. Even at the $500 buyer's commission, which makes the total hammer price $2,500, this thing was a bargain. And the reason why I say it's a bargain is even though it's not stock, this is quite possibly the cleanest unrestored single overhead cam CB750 I've ever owned. And that's saying something because I've owned about 20 of them, right? And it's not because I buy a lot of junk. I do buy a lot of junk, but whoever owned this bike took very, very good care of it and spent a lot of time and money on it, right? The exhaust is custom, but it's still a 4-4 pipe. It's not the stock 4-4, and thankfully it's not the stock 4-4 cut, which would have broken my heart. He did cut the kind of rare, K0 only front fender, but I don't hate it, This one kind of drives me crazy. He chromed the fork ears. So K0s have painted fork ears. You can see it over here. These are actually, somebody had painted it black because this bike was painted at one point black. But the later ones come with chrome fork ears, and they have these small reflectors here. The later bikes have large reflectors. So this small reflector is a K0 only. K0, K1, I think even K2 has them. But those all have painted fork ears. So that's how you know he chromed these. He actually spent money to chrome the fork ears that came painted. He polished the triple clamp here. This top clamp, if you get in close, it's oxidized, but it's polished, and it still has its rare unicorn triple clamp with the idiot lights in the gauges. He handmade his own velocity stacks. I don't know if you can see in there. But those aren't like Surcycle or the spun anodized ones. Those are actually, somebody made those out of pipe, and they polished them, and they're aluminum. It's got that's not a polished valve cover, that's actually chromed valve cover. But look at this. How many single cam Hondas you ever see don't have any leaks between the cylinders and the head, or the base gaskets? And this thing is, it's just so clean, right? I'm not entirely sure what to do with it. I think, personally, I want to just make it run and ride it around just like it is as a time capsule for a summer, just to have a little fun with it and, watch all the Honda purists at the VJMC clutch their pearls at the sight of it, But, and then maybe eventually put it back to stock just because I like performance bikes. But this is one where you could say I may not have gotten a good deal, and that's because it doesn't run. And why do I say it doesn't run? Well, there's no gas in it to start with. It does have oil in it, and it's not sumping, so that's a good sign that it was taken care of. But the last time it was on the road was like 1996, or at least according to the sticker, right? The plate sticker. So it's been a while since this thing has been ridden around. It kicks through fine. The electric start doesn't work, but it does have a battery. It turns on. All the lights work. The horn works. Everything works. There's no turn signals, so I'll have to find some and put them back on. But I don't know if this runs or not, because the carbs, even though I dropped the bowls while we were there at Mecum, they're completely frozen up top, which leads me to believe at some point somebody rebuilt these, and then they got some internal rust in them, because there are some of the... So that's the other thing too. These carbs are later bell crank carbs. They show up right around 71, 72, and go all the way to 78, these round top carburetors, right? And if you see the arm there, that tells you that these are later carbs. The K0s have individual throttle cable carbs, not these rocker arms to open it up. So somebody put later carbs on, they're frozen. So even if I could start it, it wouldn't run. Like the throttle cable's snapped and it doesn't return. It's hard to turn. It's kind of garbage. So why I'm not concerned is CB750s make oil pressure like a car. Honda kind of knew that you couldn't take these engines out to service them, or you had to take the engines out to service them. You couldn't service them in bike, so they overdid the oiling on them. And they make between 40 and 60 PSI running, which is, by comparison, I think a Honda CB450 makes 15 PSI of oil pressure at redline. So these things, they oil really well. And I've had many of them that have been standing for 20 to 30 years in somebody's garage, not even as nice as this. And they started right up as soon as I rebuilt the carbs and did the points, right? And made no noises and had great compression. In fact, I think my record is I got a bike running in 2016 that had been standing since 1990. So that's 26 years. That's my record. I'm trying to think if there's any... I think this one comes close too. I had this one running last year and then I took the carbs off of it. And I had to buy more points for it because I had just filed the points. But I think this one was, this doesn't count because I haven't ridden it. The brakes don't work. But the other one I got running and riding, and it was 26 years. This, I think, is 30 years. It was sitting before I got it running last year. Yeah, I'm not worried about it. These things, they're bulletproof. And this is genuinely a nice bike. And it has my favorite feature, which is somebody spent some really good money on this mural that is on the tank, because that is a fantastic Frank Franzetta style Viking mural on the top of the tank. And the tank itself is black cherry candy over metal flake. So in the light, let's see if I can get some light on it. You can really see this thing kind of shimmer, you know. Like, see if that works. You know, it needs some cleanup. You can see there's some marks all over it, but, you know, you can see some of the metal flakes trying to glow beneath the candy, which I really love, you know. So, yeah, candy black cherry, and the flames are ghost flames, so depending on the angle that you're looking at, that, you know, they're either really good looking or you can go down this way and they kind of disappear a little bit. Hard to capture on film, but yeah. I mean, how cool is this thing, right? The problem is, it'll never be worth much in this condition. Nobody really wants these old, like, 70s style customs, because the chopper guys hate them because they're not true hard-tailed cut-up frames, right? You can put this back to stock. And the stock guys hate them because they're not stock. And the custom guys hate them because they're not like hipster douchebag brat style, whatever you want to call it, you know, low seat, blah, blah, blah kind of garbage, right? This is what I would call, and I've talked about this before on my channel. There was a whole genre of bikes in the 70s and 80s in America that were not quite choppers. They were not quite cafe racers. They were performance bikes, but they were also cruisers you could go long distance on. And I used to call them American street racers, right? Because you could go stoplight to stoplight with your buddy's Roadrunner on Saturday night on Main Street, and then you can throw your girl on the back on a weekend and go to the lake. Or, you know, go 3 states over for a corn fest or some nonsense like that they do in the Midwest, right? It's a uniquely American concept of motorcycle. It's like comfortable but fast, but it's not like a British GT car. Or, you know, sport tour. It's just, there's no other name for it than American street racer. And you can see some like remnants of some of these through old magazines. I think there's 2 very famous Hondas called the Gentleman's Express and the Mantelpiece, where they're, you know, they look like these awesome, really well-built cafe racers, but they have chopper candy paint with lace jobs on it, and they have, you know, low bars but a sissy bar on the back, and it's all sorts of ridiculousness, you know, or they're, you know, full built to the hilt suspension and brakes and, you know, pipe and engine and carbs, but it's a bone stock bodywork with a king and queen seat, you know. It's and high bars. It's great that there's this thing, but it's sort of disappeared from America. People don't talk about it anymore. You rarely see them. And I think this is a great example of one, because we have hardtail, king and queen seat, huge sissy bar, handmade, by the way, all those parts handmade, you know, extended forks, but it's got, you know, and I think it's got an electronic ignition in it. It's got dual disc brakes. It's got aluminum rims that are anodized gold, and they're nice rims, and they're on stainless spokes. And I mean, the whole thing is just, you know, it's a hot rod. It's a motorcycle hot rod. So American street racers. I should just trademark that and like have that become my thing. So like, you know, instead of cafe racers, this is the American version, and it's way better because I think it's cooler because it's uniquely American. So that's about it from my, you know, tumbling hell shop that is just too full of bikes. I mean, there's a lot of bikes in here. There's even a 1967 Cub over there that I got to figure out what I'm going to do with. But yeah, we have motorcycles upon motorcycles. That's been my Mecum experience. Again, just to recap, the TLDR version is if you're a bike guy, go at least once just to spectate. It's great fun. You'll have a great time. You'll meet people. You can even make side deals. They don't like it, but, you know, I've sold bikes at Mecum that weren't in the auction, and so on and so forth. You'll have a good time, right? Did I get a deal on this bike and this bike over here? Stick around. I'm going to do a series on each of videos. So, you know, as always, like, subscribe, follow along, get at me in the comments with what you want to see, get at me in the comments with what you don't want to see. Just, you know, we're going to have some fun. Oh, and GTO is still running. I'm kind of clipped on being able to do stuff with it this year. I can't do a lot of traveling. There's some personal issues that I have to take care of. So that's why we're pivoting to more bike and bike lift stuff. As I've always said on this channel, I'm not anything special. I'm not a mechanic. I'm kind of terrible at it, you know. But my point is, if you watch these videos, you can see that it's fun. Have fun with motorcycles. Don't be afraid to lose a little bit of money. But I think that, you know, of all the things I could have spent my money on, alcohol, drugs, gambling, you know, fast cars, loose women, loose cars, fast women, motorcycles and hot rods kind of did okay, you know, and that's what I'm going to keep doing. Just enjoying it and having a good time with my hobby and not worrying about it, because it is fun and you only get one life and you should enjoy it as much as you can, right? Once again, like, subscribe. Let me know if you've enjoyed my video series. And, oh, I think I might cover cars at Mecum this year. As always, I'll see you next video.